how you can improve your resilience, right? A lot of times we think of the mind as something that's like static, but we know now that that isn't the case. There's something called neuroplasticity, which basically just means your brain is constantly adapting through your adulthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are not some static creature, even in your mind, right? And if you think about yourself, your body, right? You can work out, you can build your muscles,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that you can do similar things with certain skills, certain capacities that can make you more resilient, and this is kind of how we view sports at AIR as well, is sports are like a microcosm of real life, right? Because it's this environment where you will face all sorts of, problems, stressors all over the place, right? The stress of losing, conflicts with teammates, coaches who, try and micromanage you, or all of these different things. They're all stressors that happen in sports, which is great, because if you can overcome those stressors in positive ways that make you better as a person, then you are developing your resilience, and you can take that outside of sports. Hi everyone, my name is Kyle Milley. I'm a market and product developer at AIR Institutes, and you're watching UndressTheJersey.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of UndressTheJersey. Today we're here with Kyle Milley, who is a former soccer player from Mount Allison University, currently a market and product developer for AIR Institutes, which is we're going to get into this, but like a description, my take on it is like a resilience focused building culture, all kind of this stuff with focus on mental health and resilience, and in helping people. Would you describe it as like is it weird to call it like a doctor for the mind type facility or institute, or like, I guess, like, tell us about it. What is AIR Institutes?
I think what you're facing right now, trying to explain what exactly we do, is exactly why I think this is a great conversation to have, right? It can be a little bit difficult to wrap your mind around it. But really, just the short and simple version would be that we do resilience training. So psychological resilience training, right? And we do that with individuals, and we do that with organizations. And we're hoping to bring that into sports in the future. And that's why I think it's really relevant for your podcast and what you do. Yeah, for
sure. Mm-hmm. Like as we were talking offline, if you go on the website, so you guys offer different services or targets, so I assume you would have different programs or different approaches for these different, either group setting, individuals. If I'm as Tristan here being like, damn, like I'm going through something, you're going to tailor that specific to me, but I assume you also do like organizations. And I was like, man, why isn't there anything for an athlete? Why isn't there anything specific to sports? Because I think as you see more and more now within the media or people coming out, especially like professional athletes, like there is a focus on mental health. And I follow a couple people, like, I guess, mental health advocates or this stuff. It's mainly in the States. One I'm thinking about in particular, her name is Victoria Garrick, I think, and she used to be a volleyball player for a Southern school in the States. Anyway, she's kind of like this personality that emphasizes like body image and the different things that, specifically female athletes deal with. I'm getting too strong, or I don't look good in my uniform, or I want to eat this, but then I'm not going to stay in shape, so I can't have pizza. And she's just like sharing it all. Her Insta stories are saying, oh, on my second piece of pizza for today because I want to, and I'm not feeling guilty, whatever. So there's definitely a big focus, which is why I'm so interested in just learning more about what you guys do, because this is so important in sports.
Definitely.
Just a quick side note. I remember I was playing basketball for Basketball Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. And we would have like a summer camp before we would go to like tournaments or the national tournament or whatever, and we were at Acadia University, and they brought in a sports psychologist for us.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we would have like an hour session just talking about, I mean, this is a while ago now, but you know, different things about like motivation and dealing with adversity and all these kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that what you guys are trying to build or move into?
Certainly, yeah. You're definitely on the right track with all of that, for sure. I think a really important concept, which kind of would help a lot in understanding kind of what perspective we have when it comes to people in general and resilience and this notion of mental fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is especially for athletes, this kind of, I guess, metaphor might be a good one. So, you know, you go to the gym, right? And why would an athlete want to go to the gym? What do you think?
To get better, stronger, faster, specific to their performance in sport or physical performance?
Absolutely, right? So there's a lot of different things. You might want to get stronger. You might want to just be faster, right? You want to be more like higher performing, right? And at the same time, you might also go to the gym because you don't want to get injured, right?
Sure.
And by making yourself stronger, you're actually preventing yourself from getting injured, right? Those are all reasons why an athlete might want to go to work on themselves, their physical fitness, right? So if we take that kind of concept and we bring it over to mental fitness, right? We can start to think about that perspective that we kind of have, right? Which is that just like you have capacity to make yourself faster and stronger and that kind of thing, you can do the same thing with your mental fitness, right?
But me hearing that in someone who's never dabbled in that world before,
for sure,
they're like, I know that I can go to a gym and pick up a weight and I'm going to get stronger.
Absolutely, yeah.
I can't pick anything up with my brain. I can't.
No.
Like what are these exercises that I'm going to this mental gym and doing?
So we can certainly get into our conceptualization of resilience, right? I think for now, the core idea here is that resilience is a capacity that can be built, right? So you can improve your resilience, right? A lot of times we think of the mind as something that's like static, right? It doesn't, and you know, once you reach a certain age, you're kind of done, right? Your mind just kind of stays the same. But we know now that isn't the case, right? There's something called like neuroplasticity, which basically just means your brain is constantly adapting through your adulthood, right? You are not some static creature, even in your mind, right? And if you think about yourself, your body, right? You can work out, you can build your muscles, right? And the idea is that you can do similar things with certain skills, certain capacities that can make you more resilient. So if we go and we think about resilience, right? I think that's kind of the next thing, right? Is, well, what do you think resilience is?
Well, resilience is overcoming something that is difficult or hard, but these are the questions I'm starting to have, and
for sure, yeah,
without trying to like put you on the spot as someone who has all the answers. I think the only thing we can do while having a conversation is rely on our personal experiences.
Absolutely, yeah.
So like, I even want to take this from the approach that I'm talking to Kyle and I'm not talking to air.
Yeah,
for that kind of stuff. So like, talking about building resilience and like, how do you recreate a resilient moment or adversity? Because so personally to me, I've gone through different things throughout my life that have forced me to become resilient. So when I was 13, my mom passed away. So boom, there's something like that. That's forming this resilient. I need to get over this obstacle. You know, failing a test for people, getting cut from a sports team, you know, missing out on these, like, these are real life situations or adversities that I'm being faced with, not by choice. So like, how do you recreate, or like, how do you recreate these moments of adversity that are real by not actually experience? So like back to the gym example,
Mhm.
I can recreate weight. I can recreate like physical tension or resistance. How do you recreate a form of mental resistance if like, if I wake up and I say, okay, I want to go to the gym, I know I can. I just can't wake up and be like, all right, I want to do something that's difficult so I can improve my resilience. How do you, like, that's almost like an abstract
Mhm.
thing that you can't just, I can't, I can't just wake up and be like, oh, I want someone to pass away so I can learn how to deal with that.
Certainly. And what you're talking about, though, are major stressors, right?
Yeah.
So that's your conceptualization right now, which is certainly resilience comes into play for
Mm-hmm.
those, no doubt, definitely, right? But we can expand our view of stress a little bit, right? And stress occurs in a wide variety of situations
Sure.
throughout. Like life is stress, right?
Of
Yeah,
course.
to different degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even simple things that you do every day bring you some degree of stress, right?
That's fair.
So
That's
our
fair.
conceptualization of resilience is not just one that comes into play for major traumas, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although that is certainly part of it, right? And resilience is certainly a crucial component
Sure.
at those times. But resilience comes into play whenever you have stress, right?
Okay.
Um, so they can be small things, and I think a really important piece, like again relevant to sports, is sports are stress, right? When
Oh,
you
100%.
compete, right, you're facing stress during an entire competition,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's, I'm thinking of soccer right now, right? If you lose the ball, right, that is a stress. That
Huge.
just you losing
Yeah.
the ball is a stress, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like I just lost the ball, right? Or and again, that can go to any sport, right? Stress is inherent to sports. It's also inherent to real life,
Right.
right? And so resilience in our conceptualization, and that isn't everyone's conceptualization of resilience, right? To be fair,
That's
but
right.
for us, it's a much wider conceptualization.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah,
let's again, off camera, I was like, I treat these conversations or episodes as a way to get to know you.
yeah, for sure.
Like, let's dive into you and where you're from, why soccer, how did you get into soccer, and then that's like, let's dive into the world of Kyle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of influenced, what I'm doing right now, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally from Calgary, and I played soccer at a high level during my childhood, all the way up until I went to Mount Allison University and played soccer there. Uh,
Why, like, why Mount A? How did you get all the way across the country to little
yeah.
small Sackville in the middle of nowhere?
Well, to be honest, like after I was kind of done my high school, I just wanted to kind of do something different.
Mm,
That's really what it came down to. Is I didn't want to just be kind of around Calgary and same old kind of deal, right? I wanted to stretch myself and grow, right? And so it didn't matter too much that it was Mount A. It could have been a
sure,
lot of different
sure, sure,
places,
sure.
right? It was just a matter of let's do something different,
I love
right?
how you said that, because clearly you understand the importance of getting uncomfortable and
Absolutely.
meeting these moments of adversity or challenge, because you understand that's going to help you grow as an individual.
Yeah.
What where did you learn that? Is that something you were just born with and you're like, oh, I gotta do stuff that makes me resilient in order to grow?
Well, I mean, yeah, you put it really well, because that is such a crucial part
Mm-hmm.
to the concept of resilience, and
Sure.
the concept that you can build your resilience is the idea that you need to stretch yourself,
That's right.
right? If you don't stretch yourself, you won't grow. That's just it's and that's stretching yourself means stress, right?
That's
that
right.
you can't grow without stress,
So,
right?
so did you learn this in a textbook? Or
No, I
like,
did not have some kind of textbook.
you know?
This I like I just I guess developed this over time, right? This is just
Mhm.
my conception of things over time. And maybe I had that inclination when I was 18 and I was going to school and that kind of thing, right? But when I was younger, like I've had some not so great coaches at times, right?
Mm.
And they've kind of changed my passion for the sport at times, and to the detriment, right? And
Oh, I think every athlete has experienced
absolutely, right?
as soon as the game stops becoming fun, or
Yeah,
like that's when you just like, why am I doing this?
yeah, yeah.
So like you've experienced that.
For sure, yeah, and but I think when you start to realize that there's always something that you can take from every stressful
Sure.
situation, it's just a much better outlook on the world, right? Because stress is going to happen, and if you run from it, it's going to be it's not going to get you anywhere, right?
Well, I agree, but
Yeah,
I think you need to first experience that in order to learn
for
that,
sure. Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
like, and that's the thing that I'm so excited to learn, like in here, that air is starting to implement this,
Hmm.
uh because it's such an important, not just for athletes, like, but overall, as people, like, it's
Yeah,
so important to understand that bad stuff's going to happen,
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
it's all about your perspective on how you're going to overcome it.
yeah.
But it's important to, like, it's almost like I was joking with you there, like, there's no textbook for that.
No.
Someone can tell you about that, but you're like, oh yeah, I understand that, but like innately they don't actually.
Hmm.
So like, what are some ways that you, like Kyle, want to, like, help teach, like, what are some ways you're helping teach young kids or young athletes this stuff? Like, do you maybe it's just that if you're in a sport, you're gonna learn that quicker than someone who's not in sports.
Honestly, yeah. So I think, well, you bring a really important point about sports, right? And this is kind of how we view sports at Air as well. Is sports are like a microcosm of real life, right?
Mm.
Because it's this environment where you will face all sorts of problems, stressors all over the place, right? The stress of losing, what that feels like, at an emotional level, right? We've all dealt with that as athletes, and it hurts, right? But
100%.
a lot of those lessons that you learn, right? Conflicts with teammates, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
Right. There's coaches who try and micromanage you, or all of these different things. They're all stressors that happen in sports, which is
Hmm.
which is great, because if you can overcome those stressors in positive ways that make you better as a person, then you are developing your resilience, and you take that outside of sports, right?
It's, yeah. I mean, sports. I owe so much of my perspective on life to sports because of all those different things and skills that you're learning to. It's funny, the more I talk to other athletes, and in a huge theme that I get out of doing UndressTheJersey and storytelling,
Hmm.
are these, like, every athlete experiences some experience, or yes, some experience that teaches them something that they'll carry on throughout the rest of their life. So like, for
Absolutely.
me, I think of, again, you're on a basketball team, or you're on a soccer team, and you have a coach. I remember when I got my first job, I was a landscaper here in Halifax,
Hmm.
and I was thrown into a team with the boss or the manager, and then you had, the coworkers or the other laborers, like, those are like my teammates, and we have a common goal to achieve. I always think of, like, I can't think of not being an athlete or not being in a sport and then being thrown into that situation when
Exactly.
I'm 17, 16 and I have no experience, I would be lost, or I would
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
like, my interactions with my other coworkers would be a lot different than they were if I hadn't been an athlete, because I know as an athlete, each of my teammates is going to respond in a different way to like my actions
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
the coaches. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's learning to deal with like these little things that's so valuable. What's something that you learned from sport that you carry on, like even into the office now, or even with the team that you guys have at Air? Like,
For sure. Yeah.
what's something that's you owe to soccer?
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot that I owe to soccer for sure, and you've thought of some great examples from your own life, and
Mm-hmm.
how, because they stretched you, right? Those
Sure.
stressors stretched you.
Oh
You
yeah,
became
like
stronger for
yeah.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you were better able to deal with the real life stressors, and it just goes back down to the idea of sports being so amazing for. It's just an amazing opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for developing minds and to prepare themselves for real life. So yeah, for me personally, sure. Many examples, I would say. One big one I believe it was after my third year. Yeah. And I was in Calgary. I was playing soccer for the men's team there. And I ended up breaking my leg playing,
Oh,
breaking my shin, right? Right there on the field. Yeah. So
what did someone tackle you, or?
yeah, so the ball went in over top of my head, and I was playing like striker, and I ran in, and the keeper ran in and collide
Oh,
and snap, and yeah. So
that's one thing I'd never experienced. Like,
right,
I never
mm-hmm.
broke a bone. I never had a major
Yeah,
injury. I had a couple sprained ankles, but never like something severe as a broken shin.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, so that was like a year-long recovery process, right? And obviously a lot of stress along the way, right? A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
There's a lot.
what was the first thing that came into your mind as you, like, was it pain? Was it you lying on the ground being like, "Holy, I just broke my leg"? Like,
Yeah.
do you remember the first thing that you thought of?
Well, I think the first thing I thought of was, well, this doesn't feel right. Like I haven't felt something like this before, so I
Right.
knew something was wrong right away. Right?
Mhm.
It's just that feeling that this is something that is beyond what I've normally experienced. Right?
Mhm.
So certainly that was that. But I remember, I think my dad came to see me in the hospital afterwards, and he was like, and I was like, don't worry, like this was bound to happen. The way I play, this is bound to happen.
Interesting.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah,
Something
aggressive.
like this
Yeah.
happened, so there it is, right? And yeah, but again, like lots of uncertainty after the fact, and you're like, will I be able to come back and be the same
Sure.
player and that kind of thing. And eventually I did. I played in my fourth year, so I did make it back. I still had a rod in my shin and that kind of thing to
Okay,
help the,
so
yeah.
like this is bringing me back to a conversation that I had with David Thompson, who's
Yeah.
a hockey player for University of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Really good hockey player. He was OUA Player of the Year. He was first team All Canadian. He was U of T MVP. I actually got to see him when I first moved to Toronto. We went golfing with a couple of his buddies, and he was telling me about all these camps that he was supposed to go to, the Ottawa Senators camp he was supposed to go to, COVID, whatever.
Yeah.
But in the conversation, he brought up uh, what kind of injury was it? Was it an ACL? I think it was an ACL tear from going from his senior year of high school, where he was supposed to get recruited and go play Division I, but like he tore his ACL. And
Yeah.
the biggest lesson that he got from it, and again, this goes back to my question about how do you learn this? Something
Mm-hmm.
bad happens, I'm going to deal with it, I'm going to move on and have this positive outlook.
Yeah.
He was in the doctor's office, and he got into the elevator with his mom. He was like, "Mom, day one of recovery starts tomorrow. Like I'm
Right.
just
Yeah.
I'm gonna deal with this. I'm gonna overcome it." Boom. It was just like It happened, move on.
Yeah.
Did you have that same sort of perspective, or were you like, man, I don't know if maybe this is it. Like, I don't know if I'll play again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to have some of those thoughts come up, right? But and you can't, you don't want to just push those away. I think those are totally natural things to have happen, right? So I think a lot of athletes going through something like that, it's not like you should feel like super negatively towards yourself or anything, because you have some uncertainty, right? It's just going to be part of the process. It's I think it's just, where do you go from there after you have those thoughts?
Sure.
Right. And because you do have choices, and you can choose on how you react to all of this, right? So
and you almost need a certain level of patience too. Like you need you need this certain patience to be like, all right, this is the situation I'm in today. But like, by being able to see this bigger picture and being like, okay, so I have 6 months until training camp starts, or like, if you can kind of train yourself, or like just to kind of slow down, feel those emotions that like uncertainty, like, I don't know what's happening, this sucks. But like being able to stretch out like the duration that this is going to take. Yeah. That's incredibly important. And again, an analogy that I use all the time, which is something that I lived by as a basketball player. Yeah. As a shooter, I was a shooter for basketball. So with like, whenever you miss a shot and then you miss the next shot, you're like, damn, like this sucks. You start getting these negative emotions. The big term or analogy in basketball is next play, or the next shot is it's just having like this amnesia and like, okay, what happened, but that's not going to affect, like, you can't let that affect the next day or the next shot or the next moment. Something that, like, again, that's something I really only learn from sports, because it's this it's this continuous repetition of like, you're playing games, you have so many different sets and different, it's constant. I don't know if where else would you learn that in outside of sports, like something that you do constantly on a day-to-day that's it goes back to the gym analogy. The only way you get stronger is by reps. I'm sure, like, can you speak on the importance of repetitions for building that mental muscle?
For sure. Yeah. And actually, I'd love to show our conceptualization of resilience. I have I have a picture of it right here. And I think that would really help to kind of like show these different capacities.
Yeah. Let's throw it up. Do you have,
I can share my screen here. If that works.
Yeah. Beautiful.
You see that? Yep. So we've got kind of like, this is our conceptualization of resilience. And I think we've had lots of good conversation already about kind of some of the different aspects of and different ways that you can stretch yourself, right? And so this is more general. This is just our conceptualization of resilience as a whole, right? But all of these aspects, all of these different capacities are certainly relevant to sports, right? Because at the end of the day, humans play sports. Right.
Yeah.
So, So, this conceptualization is very relevant. So I'll just kind of talk more broadly, I guess. In the bottom left there with the orange, this is first of all, this entire wheel, we call it, is like the BFIT framework, right? So it's the idea that resilience, when you're resilient, you're being fit. So
so you're taking this as a mental fitness.
Absolutely.
Because it is easy. Like, the general population knows, in order to be physically fit, you got to work out.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to take that same thing and apply it to the mental fitness.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And of course, it's one thing to say, oh, mental fitness, and you've got to, you've got to work out your mind and all that. Right. And it's like, okay, but it's still very difficult to go from there, right?
Well, exactly.
Lots of people don't know, well, what comprises of your mental fitness, right?
That's right.
Like, it's confusing, right? So we have a model that we actually use, and that's why I think it's a great way to kind of ground people in this idea of mental fitness, right? You can there's different capacities that you can build. And, these are those capacities as far as air is concerned for building resilience, right?
Okay.
So in the bottom left there, it's the idea that you can, like, resilience comes from seeing fit, right? And so this is
like imagining it and thinking of these tough situations.
So when we were talking about, this is more about perspective. It's the perspective that you bring to, sports or life, right?
Sure.
And so when we were talking about the growth mindset, right?
Yep.
And that kind of thing, that's falling under CFIT, right? That's all related to. So this is kind of like a mental muscle or a capacity, right? It's a grouping of specific skills that you can develop that are related to that idea of seeing fit, that idea of perspective.
Gotcha.
It could also be like attitude, if you're thinking about like sports, like the attitude that you
for sure,
have,
like
right?
You, when you broke your shin, you saw fit, like you saw
exactly
the positive of that situation versus screw this, my I'll never be the same athlete ever again.
Exactly. And some other things come into play too, like your sense of control, right? So when I broke my leg, right, or when anyone has an injury, you have a choice on, if there's things that are out of your control. The injury that occurred is out of your control because it has already happened. It's in the past, right? That is no longer in your control. So is your sense of control to try and, influence things that are out of your control? Or is it to only focus on what you can actually do?
That's right.
Right? So, your perspective on that really does matter when it comes to resilience, right? If you're constantly grasping at things that are out of your control, that's going to be a major issue. Yeah. So that's just one example of kind of a skill, a capacity that we can actually learn and build to become better at understanding what is under our control and and acting at times, and sometimes releasing things that we can't control and letting those go. Right? Just an example, and because of it does relate to kind of that injury example, right? So yeah, that's kind of the CFIT mental muscle, right? And so also under there, optimism, self-efficacy, and well-being, and those are different skills that you can.
Got it.
Self-efficacy is like self-confidence.
Yeah, how you see yourself and how you feel about yourself.
Feel about yourself. Yeah, your abilities, like your self-confidence. So how do you feel about your abilities in your sport?
Right? I'm not missing the next shot. Like I'm wide open in the corner, get me the ball and it's going in. It's going in.
Exactly. It's that Kobe mentality, right? Yeah. That's the self-efficacy that he has to the maximum.
For sure.
And you have to believe in yourself before you can actually do the action successfully, right?
100%.
Yeah. So again, but you can build that, right? You can become more self-confident. Right?
So how's this any different from the think fit? Because isn't this me thinking in a positive way versus a negative way?
That's a bit more still perspective. Think fit is more about your personal effectiveness and also your mental discipline. So this is a little bit more like in the moment than kind of how you see the world as a whole, if that makes sense, right?
Okay.
So yeah, in your brain, how are you thinking about things? So like this is stress management, mindfulness, right? Are you just clouded in your brain? Can you not think because you've got 1,000 things going on in your brain, right?
Sure.
And that's a common thing in soccer. I know I've dealt with that before in the past too, right? You've just got all this stimulus when you're playing, right? And it's hard to just be clear and be in the moment.
That's right.
Right. So that's kind of that mental discipline piece.
And you hear a lot of athletes talk about, when you're having a game of your lifetime, they'll describe the gameplay as like everything is just in slow motion. I saw the ball coming to me and I knew where to make that next pass, or I saw this defender to the left a little bit, so I had room. Like it's when you can you have a level of mental clarity where everything just feels so slow. You feel so in control, and you're just you just have, you're on fire. You can't be stopped.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a great feeling. It doesn't happen all the time.
No,
but
and that's flow, right? That's flow.
right.
And that's kind of when mindfulness when you're totally mindful about what's going on, right? You're completely aware and things are just happening kind of automatically.
Yeah.
Right. It's not something that you have to think about. You're just doing it. Right. And you're just responding to everything in your environment. It feels great. Right. It feels great.
How much do you, associate that or like how much do you owe that to your preparation, or how much time you put into training and actually building the skill versus something that just happens magically?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's as far as like flow goes, right? And as far as like there is that preparation aspect, right? You still need to have developed the skill in order to be able to respond to your environment effectively, right?
Sure.
Like the actual physical skills and the technical skills of the sport, right? If you haven't put any work into actually practicing, right, you're going to go out there and you're going to be sluggish no matter what's going on mentally, right?
Sure.
But at the other end of the spectrum, right, you have lots of people who are extremely capable in their sport but don't perform like it, right? And one of those reasons could be, and maybe it isn't, but as far as we're thinking about the think fit side of things, right, the mental discipline side of things, right, that mindfulness component could certainly be something there, right? Because if you have all this stimulus going on in your brain and you're just thinking about everything that's happening, you're not responding, right?
Sure.
And that's going to affect your performance in a negative way, regardless of your actual abilities, right?
You see it all the time. Like, I'm not going to call him out, but one of my best friends, he arguably one of the greatest, or like arguably like has the most skill in basketball, like just pure, like innate, like born skill, like just feel for the game, IQ on fire. And in growing up, like he's such a confidence player. Yeah. So like when he's feeling confident, feeling good about himself, like his skill is just shining. But then like there were a couple of years where we were playing and he just wasn't performing. And we all knew he was so skilled and we all knew he was great and better than a lot of the players. But unless up here is clean and clear, like none of that skill matters. And it's funny. It's funny to see that, like, I'm sure a lot of people listening who are athletes or were athletes can relate. They know that their friend is much better than they actually play.
Absolutely. Yeah. It happens all the time. Right. And again, it could be the mindfulness component. It could be the think fit, right? It could be part of that going on. It could also be other things, or maybe it's a combination of things, right? But certainly mindfulness is something that we can build. We can build the capacity to be mindful, right? That's why Headspace exists. That's why things like that are out there in the world, right? And that's why here at AIR we build this skill with people all the time, right? And so stress management and decision making and goal setting are also part of this kind of notion of thinking fit.
Nice one.
Yeah. And so just moving on to the next one is feel fit. And this has to do with emotions, right? And emotions happen, like in sports for sure. Emotions come up all the time, right? Things don't go well, things do go well. It can be outside of sport, it can have to do with injury, or it can be in the actual competition itself. But emotions are a big part of sports, and how we can label those emotions, which is kind of the emotional literacy part, right? How do we recognize what those emotions are to begin with, right? Is it, am I feeling sad? Am I feeling fearful? Am I feeling joyful or angry, right? And being able to actually understand your own body and the emotions that you experience, right? And then being able to actually have the capacity to hold those emotions, because some people don't have that, right? And you can build that too. And so, if your capacity is really small, they're going to overflow. And when they overflow, you're going to, shut down, maybe blow up at teammates, right? All of these things which we've all experienced
See it all the time
through sports, right? And if you can hold them, then you can use them, right? Emotions are actually fuel. They're energy that you can bring forward and you can use in your sports to improve your performance, right? There's all sorts of like I think of like LeBron in the playoffs, right? When he gets angry, right? He becomes unstoppable when I find, right?
He becomes like this 300-pound train that just can't
exactly stop. Right. And that's because he's utilizing his emotions. They become motivating for him, right? And he turns on this next gear because he's able to use emotions effectively.
Now, you saw it in the Michael Jordan documentary too, where even the smallest thing, Michael was like, what's that meme that keeps popping?
I took that personal.
Yeah. I took that personally.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what you're talking about here
Definitely.
So how would someone learn or increase their emotional literacy or increasing that bank so it's not so small?
Well, for like emotional literacy and that kind of thing, right? It's starting to understand your own body and being aware of it, right? And changing your perspective on emotions to begin with, because a lot of people have these negative feelings towards their emotions, right? They push them away, right, as if they're something bad, right, that they don't want to experience. And that's a fundamental problem that a lot of people kind of face. It's like, I don't want to feel angry, push away, right? Sure. I don't want to feel sad, push it away, right? But that's the issue, is inevitably, sometimes you won't be able to push it away. And it's going to come back out in a different situation 100%. Where it's going to be really maladaptive for you in sports or in life, right? And so we have to change how we experience those emotions and how we the relationship that we have with ourselves. And
as I'm looking at this diagram, is you see how interconnected each of these are. Like if you just have one and you're really good at one, like for example, like the emotions, if you're only feeling the emotion but you're lacking like the think or the see, you're not going to be able to piece them together. And when you feel a negative emotion, you're not going to, process that. You're not going to take the mindfulness or the control of that emotion. Like you need all of them together.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're absolutely right about that. Right. And some people are really good at some of these. Sure. And, it's a big growth opportunity for other parts of it. Right. And that's the way a lot of people are. Right.
That's right.
And what's great is at AIR, like we have a measure, and we measure each of these skills. Right. So we can give people a report on every single one of these, so exactly where you are, right? In that moment, where are you at your emotional literacy? Where are you at in your mindfulness and your control? And so you could see what you really need to work on to become more well-rounded, right? Because the issue is, if you have something that you score super, super high on, right? Like let's say optimism, super, super high on optimism, that might not be that good actually, because you've got all these other things that are growth opportunities, and you rely on your optimism to kind of get you through it, right? But anything in excess can be an issue, right?
Yeah, and you're not taking the time to analyze or focus or even acknowledge the negative parts that are growth opportunities that can help you.
Exactly. Well, part of being resilient is being adaptable, right? And so if you're only able to kind of like deal with stress in one particular way, and that one particular way doesn't work for you, well, what do you have left, right? Right. There's not a whole lot that you have in your toolkit kind of to move forward with, right? So it's being well-rounded as a person and as an athlete is important. And exactly like, again, with optimism, for example, you're super high in optimism, lower on a lot of other things, right? You might be using this kind of wishful thinking to get through everything, right? And, optimism in excess is not necessarily a good thing, right?
I agree.
Right. So it's, and when other skills aren't as developed as well, then it becomes not as good either. Right. So, it's certainly interesting. You definitely pinpointed that. I didn't even need to explain that, right? You already noticed and saw that all of these things are related to each other, definitely. And that's why we kind of work on each of these skills separately to build the whole capacity. Yeah. That's kind of the feel fit, which we just talked about. And then the final one there is the act fit. And that's kind of the interpersonal side, right? That's how you actually show up in the world. So this is more about behavior, right? Okay. Yeah.
And specifically like your behavior within a group of other people?
Yeah, exactly. With other people. It's your behavior with other people, right?
Yeah.
And so that could be teammates when it comes to sports. That could be teammates. That could also be, the people that you're playing against, right? And so that's where that sportsmanship kind of piece comes in too, right? And so, within this, you have a bunch of skills that you can develop in an interpersonal sense, right? The behaviors that you kind of exhibit with other people. Mm-hmm. And so that, just breaking up those skills, we've got kind of empathy, right? How empathic are you? Can you see what your teammate is going through, for example? Maybe they're dealing with an injury. Maybe they're having a bad game. Can you empathize with them to be able to relate to them? And, that's part of being a good teammate, right?
For sure.
Is understanding what they're going through. Because if you don't understand that, if you can't kind of have that empathy with them, then you're going to just kind of, you might shut them out. You might not acknowledge them or how they're feeling, and then you're not going to be as successful as a team, right? Because you're not going to be there for them, right? So it's that's kind of where this empathy piece kind of fits in.
I even find that I would argue that the best leaders have great empathy, because it allows them to then, like you said, relate to them, but then take their own perspective and then share that with the teammate, that allows them to see the situation in a different way. So
Definitely.
Great leaders are able to do that. But also a great leader doesn't have the ability to do that without one, the empathy, but two, a well-rounded think fit, feel fit, see fit.
Exactly.
If they're not strong in those areas, then they can't be of any help to their teammate.
Exactly. So and that raises a big point, right? Like, you being a resilient person has a lot of impact on your team and the people around you, right? And it creates a culture of resilience on your team, if it's a team, right? And that's so important, especially as a leader, because then you have influence. And we all know about leaders who maybe are have some of these growth opportunities that they're not kind of taking advantage of. And that actually does affect their leadership abilities and their leadership capacity because of their own resilience under stress, right? Maybe they don't have a very good distress tolerance, so their emotions bubble up and they freeze up in big moments as a leader, or maybe they blow up at their teammates in big moments with a lot of stress, right? And so their capacity to be a good leader is definitely tied to their resilience as a person.
100%.
So just moving on from there, you've got boundaries, right? And those are the interpersonal boundaries that you set with people. And it's important that those boundaries exist, with coaches, right? With your teammates, with other people on other teams, with referees, right? Where are your boundaries? Knowing where those are, having flexible boundaries, right? So that, they can bend a little bit, but we don't let them break, right? And we don't let people kind of get into our personal zone and And that's important in being resilient, right? You have to know where those are. You need to know where you stand on certain things.
For sure.
And, and then that kind of leads into the next part, which is being able to kind of assert those boundaries, assert yourself in your sport, but also interpersonally with other people, right? And then inevitably at the end there, you've got the conflict / collaboration, right? Because they're very related. And that's definitely in team sports a massive part of things, right? Conflict is kind of inevitable, really, in life and in sports.
Sure.
And with any team, conflict is inevitable, right? There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be things that come up, right? And it's how can you deal with that as a person in the most effective way possible? That's going to move your team forward in an adaptive way, right? In an effective way. So, and that's, again, sports, and all of this is sports, right? And I'm using that perspective here, but it's not just sports, right? And we know there's teams in real life and managing conflict within your family, and that all of this has to do with your ability to be resilient.
But that's the fun part, or that's why sports is so valuable, and being an athlete is so valuable, because you learn all these things without really knowing it, or it's just a part of the game, and it's a fun way and an easy way to learn this naturally, which is arguably better or easier, because if you're not an athlete or not a sport, you have to actively seek, or you have to be so much more aware of these things in everyday life. That's where you can hit a downward spiral. And if you're just going through life and all these negative things keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you, you're just going to be like, wow, life sucks.
Definitely.
Who wants to be here? Why, this life isn't fun if all these negative things just keep hitting you. But if you're an athlete, you learn almost in this safe space that bad things are going to happen. You're going to blow a 30-point lead. You're going to blow it too. You're going to score in your own goal. These things are going to happen, and sports provides such a kind of an enclosed safe space, because after you leave the playing field, even though you might get roasted on social media, as some of my teammates still do by their friends on Snapchat, and these memories.
Yeah.
In the bigger sense, in the literal sense, you're in these 4 lines, you're in these boundaries. As soon as you step, now you're in the real world, and that's just part of the game.
Absolutely. Right. And so it, just like you said, it can be a safer space to experience the stressors that you will face in life and develop these capacities. Right.
100%.
But what happens with lots of people in life and in sport is when they experience these stressors, they have to adapt. And sometimes they don't adapt in the most effective ways. And that's where you have some of these preferences for certain ways of dealing with things, and you become less well-rounded as an athlete in a mental sense, right?
Sure.
It's the same sort of thing, again, bringing it back to the idea of physical fitness versus mental fitness, right? Physical fitness, if you're just working out one part of your body, right? Yep. You might be resilient in that one area, right?
All the time.
Yeah, exactly, right? But if you're not doing a full workout in becoming athletic as a whole, right, then you put yourself at risk for injury, right? And the same thing, and these becoming more mentally fit, again, puts you in a place where you won't you hopefully will be more resilient to injury, just like, and what is mental injury, right? It's mental illness. It's and just lower functioning, lower performance, right? It doesn't need to be mental illness. It's just, you're not completely there at work. You're not completely there in your sport, right? You're not being your best self, right? And so that's why this mental fitness conceptualization is just really helpful, because it's empowering too, right? You know that you can actually go out there and you can build these things, then that's a great feeling, right? It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all negative, right? We have these, and that's why we call them growth opportunities. We don't call them weaknesses, because they're opportunities for you to grow.
Well, it's making me think of, when you show up to training camp on the first day, and coach says, all right, beep test, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you spent your entire off season partying, drinking, hanging out with, like, eating bad food, you know, working out whenever you felt like it, you're going to show up on that beep test day and you're going to be like, uh-oh, like this is going to be hell. I'm not prepared for it. I'm not, like, I wasn't ready. The same thing happens with your mental. If on that day, if something tragic or traumatic or something huge happens and hits you, are you going to be prepared to deal with it? Or are you that guy that just ate burgers and went to the movies all summer, went to the beach and just had a great time? Like, the similarities, like, that's why sports is so valuable. It's I love that. I love that you guys are moving into this realm. For sure.
Yeah. And it can be big stressors that this stuff can help you to deal with, right?
Sure.
But it can also be like there's accumulation of smaller stressors too,
So
right?
true.
Just think about when things just aren't going right for you all day, right?
Yep.
It might not be one big event didn't go right. It could be just a bunch of little things. And before you know it, your mind is clouded, or you're overly emotional, or, you know, and it's spilling over in negative ways in your life, right? Or you just feel like your sense of control is all over the place, right? Or your optimism, or you're getting in conflict with people and not in an adaptive sense, right? That's why our view of resilience and stress is much broader, because again, we know that little things, matter, and it's also very personal, right? Someone who hasn't grown as much, someone who hasn't, experienced very much very many stressors in their life, maybe small stressors have a massive impact on them. True. Right? Whereas someone who's been through, a whole bunch of stuff and come out the other end, small stressors don't do much at all, right? So it's a personal experience.
I'm glad you bring that up, because, like, I've had conversations with people, like, especially when I was younger, I would look at someone who's having a bad day because it's raining outside and they had a parking ticket, and then they went home and, they studied they got their test result back and it sucked, and they just said, life sucks. And it was very easy for me to look at them and just be like, man, like, grow up, like, it's going to be fine, like, whatever. But the fact that you say that everyone's spectrum of stress is so much different, something small to them, like, that's such a valuable thing that I went through, that I had to learn and understand about other people. It's very true, and you're just saying everything that I totally believe in.
Yeah, that's great. And it's easier now to put kind of words to that, right? And really, actually, one of the things that you developed in stretching yourself during whatever point in your life and after those experiences is actually your ability to be empathetic to others, right?
100%.
And so we can see how that can become a skill and something that you can learn just from that example, right? So, and again, that makes you a bit more resilient too, right? If you're constantly, like, having this negative perspective on people because of things that they're doing, and you're not seeing the empathy in that, right? Then, that's actually having an impact on you too, right? Oh,
it was a huge wake-up call.
Yeah.
It was huge. And it wouldn't happen to the fact, or to the point where I was calling them out on it, but just internally, I was like, man, like, just, it's going to be fun. Like, internally, I was telling myself, like, why are they making such a big deal? Yeah, empathy is super underrated. I don't think it's talked about enough.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the resilience wheel, right? That's our conceptualization of things. And those are the different skills that we at AIR build. And of course, it is a process, right? It kind of starts with awareness and just being aware of these things to begin with. And that's why this talk is great, because it's a big awareness talk, right? You have to know these things exist before you can start to see how you fit in to something like this, right? And then it's about education and teaching people and about these different aspects and what kind of comprises them, right?
Yeah.
But then, then you got to go one step further, and then it becomes about building them, right? Building the skills. And that's where that repetition comes in.
Right.
And, you actually need to do exercises in
Exactly.
order to connect these things to your personal life, to build these skills and actually become that higher performing individual. And then of course, on top of that, then you might have that mastery stage too, where, you're working with potentially like air faculty in a coaching environment, right? Where it's to really become just that much more adept at dealing with your environment and the stressors that come with it in
100%.
adaptive ways. So yeah.
Something that you just touched on is the awareness and being aware of these different stressors day to day. Like, what are some ways that maybe, someone listening can walk away, like, or just internally, like, what are ways that they can identify that something is a stressor versus something that's not a stressor? Like, how do you pinpoint what is and what's not a growth opportunity? For sure. Yeah. I think the first step is just to start listening to your body, right? And, you have to be aware of what you're experiencing. And a lot of us aren't, right? A lot of us are not. Again, it's about that pushing away of thoughts, pushing away of feelings, right? And that happens all the time with people, right? And when you push away certain thoughts, when you push away certain feelings, you miss the opportunity to understand more about your situation, to understand more about the stress that you might be facing, right? So a lot of people, when they experience stress, they try and shut it out. And that's a very natural thing. It's super natural, right? Like everyone to some extent really has done that. 100%. Right? And but it isn't helpful to us. So I think the very first thing is to just change your conception of stress, right? Stress is not something to be avoided, right? And the corresponding feelings and thoughts that come with stress are not something to be avoided either. They're something to be aware of, right? And now this is way easier said than done, especially for people who might be lower in that distress tolerance, who might not be very mindful to begin with, right? And that's going to be difficult. And I would urge everyone to be careful with how you approach this stuff, especially without the guidance, right? That's why we exist. That's why we have programs and stuff, is to take people through these through these steps in ways that are going to help them and not, overwhelm them. Right. If you just start trying to tackle all of these aspects at once and start feeling everything in your world, right, it's going to be really overwhelming and not necessarily helpful to you, right? So that it's just like if you go to the gym, right, and you've never bench pressed before, and you pick up, a mass of weights and try and just start going, what's going to happen? Well, you might get injured, right? You might get injured. And the same is definitely true with the mental side of things, right? And so we do have to be careful about how we implement these skills into our real life. And again, that's why we're here, because we want to help people through their process at the appropriate pace for them, right? It's great. Kyle, if I can ask you just to throw the screen back, like to stop sharing your screen,
sure,
just if you're finished with that.
Done with
diagram.
That. Yep.
Again, like the way you frame, or the best way, and this is why I think this makes sense for a platform like UndressTheJersey, is because you yourself, Kyle, but you also as Air, are doing such a great job in presenting this in a way that's relative to athletes and sports, because like just your analogy of using the physical fitness in the gym, that's such an easy way to think about this, yet like it's just, we're not like in school we have phys ed class to learn about physical fitness and physical education, but we don't have a mental ed class.
No, we don't.
Like there may be things that are tied into the curriculum, but it's not as direct. And just me hearing this, I've heard it before, but like actually having a real conversation about it. Like, yeah, you don't just walk into a gym and then stack on 3 plates and try to squat, because like you're going to injure yourself.
Yeah.
The same thing needs to be applied to the mental fitness and mental health in general.
Yeah.
Like people, like there are fitness trainers for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to get better physical fitness. I'm going to go hire someone who's better at it than I am. The same thing needs to be done for your mental health. Too many times people try to deal with their demons and deal with their stressors by themselves, and then they end up going down a dark place and being like, well, this is just the way I am, and it's not going to get better, and this sucks. Yeah. Like people, like my mind jumps to, and I'm sure a lot of people's minds jump to, you know, the negative ways to deal with mental health is like drugs, alcohol, and just escapism.
Yeah.
But like there's even smaller forms of it, just like jumping on Instagram or procrastinating from that essay that you're writing. So I'm going to go play my NBA 2K or my new PS5. Like,
for sure, these
are all forms of escapism. I'm guilty of going for a run, or I'm guilty of going to the gym to avoid my stress and my anxiety or that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though that's a positive way to escape from it, it's at the end of the day, it's still escapism.
Yeah.
And so like these conversations are so important to have, because people could be like me and be like, oh no, it's fine. Like I'm going to work out. Like I'm going for a walk. But in a sense, you are still running from the stress, which as you guys frame it, is a growth opportunity. So it's important that you tackle or you attack that stress, because you're going to get better from it. I love that you opened this up saying, why did you move out east from being out west? Is because you wanted, you were seeking this moment of resilience, like an opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced the same thing when I graduated from university. I booked a one-way ticket to London, England. I said, I need to get the hell out of here. I don't know anyone in London. I'm just going because I know I need to jump in the deep end and learn how to swim.
Absolutely.
It was super tough, but I learned from it. I'm now back in Canada. I'm living in Toronto now. Who knows when I'll go back to Europe? But like the fact that I did that, I did it for a reason. If you're someone who's never dealt with large amounts of stress before, you need to start small and start being aware and recognizing day-to-day stressors. Because just like the gym, you have no muscles. Yeah. You're going to have small muscles in a year. You're going to have bigger muscle. Like there's levels to this ish, as they would say.
Exactly. Yeah, you're totally on point. Yeah. And yes, for some people, starting small is dealing with one of those small stressors that they deal with in a day, in a more adaptive manner, right? Yep. And actually acknowledging that stress and moving forward from it. And it could be very small, right? And that is that first step, right? Now you've kind of moved forward and you've become better as a result. And for some people, it might take bigger stressors in order to build the same kind of, or to improve their capacity in some way, right? And so, yeah, you've got it, right? That's
Beautiful.
Mental fitness. Yeah.
Kyle, where can people get in contact with you or specifically AIR in case they want to learn more about what you guys are up to?
Well, I would encourage people to go to our website. So www.air-institutes.com. Also, just please send us an email, office@air-institutes.com. And either one of those, take a look at our website, see what we have to offer currently. We certainly hope to offer sports related programs in the future. Right now, we have programs for individuals. We have courses for individuals. We also have, we do organizational programs. So if there's groups, we can do stuff like that. But yeah, please just contact us. Or you can contact me too, Kyle@air-institutes.com. Love to have a conversation about resilience, about mental fitness, about maybe what we can do to help you to stretch and strengthen. So
And if people are in, because you guys are located in Halifax, like we have listeners in Toronto, we have listeners in, can they still learn more or contact you guys?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Lots of our programs right now, well, basically all of our programs right now are actually through Zoom. So,
Beautiful.
And we have courses that are online, and things like that as well. So, yeah, we're certainly not limited by location at all. Yeah.
And then the last thing, because I think this could provide value for you guys, is if I'm a coach and I'm like, damn, I need my team to like learn about these things because it's going to help them be better teammates, which is going to help me look better as the coach because we're going to win better games. It like, do you guys provide services for teams or group, like a larger group if I want my team?
Yeah, so we do have, like, again, it's it isn't really with the sports perspective right now, right? But we do have programs for organizations, and so in essence, those are for groups, right?
Right.
So depending on the situation and what kind of organization or what kind of team, we may be able to do something for sure. And so I would just encourage reaching out, and we'll have a conversation about where people are at, where the team's at, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Beautiful. No, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on. This is a conversation that needs to be more relevant in everyone's day to day, whether you're an athlete or just someone, because we as human beings are these funny creatures that, are reactive, and we're super emotional too. So it's important. I love what you guys are doing. I'm interested. I love talking about this stuff. This hour and however time, like, it flew by for me.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm really appreciative for you to come on here. We'll stay in touch and go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, and I really appreciate the fact that you provide this platform for people like me and other athletes to share. Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll be in touch. Thanks, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Take care, man.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Milley. I'm a market and product developer at Air Institutes, and you are just watching Undress the Jersey.